All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today morning for this Academia IBDP webinar. I really appreciate all of you taking the time. I said good morning, but I know that some of you are joining us from different time zones, and it could be afternoon for you already. Now, we are, of course, delighted to see the interest from families who are planning ahead rather than waiting for the DP program to begin. As an educator, I always like to see planning ahead. In academia, we work with students through their academic journey, particularly through demanding programs such as IGCSE and IBDP. Recently, of course, we are also venturing towards AP, and we have also started helping students in edXL IGCSE and different international curricula. The goal of academia isn't simply to help students score well, but to help them become more confident, independent learners. This webinar is a continuation of series that we started some months ago. We started first with an IGCSE webinar, which we were quite happy with, and we got very positive response from parents and students community. The IBDP is one of the world's most respected pre-university programs, but it is also one which is perhaps the most misunderstood. Students often worry that it is impossibly difficult, while parents are not always sure how best to support their children. Today's session is therefore intended to replace myth with practical advice from someone with extensive IB experience. I am delighted that today's speaker is Mr. Richard Hillebrand, an educator and school leader with extensive experience in UK, South Asia, and the Middle East. He has worked as an IB educator and IB school head for many decades. And he also brings a unique point of view of an IB examiner, which I'm sure is very interesting for a lot of our students and a lot of the parents. We have invited him because we wanted participants to hear from someone who has worked with DP students over many years and understand what success really looks like. Mr. Hillebrand will share practical advice on preparing for the diploma program. The session is designed for both students and parents because, of course, success in DP is very much a partnership. We are keeping the format the same it was when we started a few months ago. Feel free to post questions in the chat throughout the presentation. Our speaker will address those questions when appropriate. And even that doesn't happen during the presentation, after the presentation, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask any questions and we can get into a really deeper discussion. We have found that that's very productive, and I think a lot of the nitty-gritties, a lot of the points and details that parents and students are interested in get sort of explained and understood during the session. I also want to encourage all of you to ask questions no matter how basic you may think they are. It is perfectly reasonable to assume that if one of you has a question, it's other families are probably wondering the same thing. So with that, it is my great pleasure to hand over to Mr. Richard Hillebrand. Mr. Hillebrand, thank you once again for joining us, and we are looking forward to hearing from your insights.
Mr. Carroll, thank you very much indeed. Good morning again to everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think if is the presentation available to be put up?
It was visible.
Yeah, okay.
It's just gone.
Good. Okay. Right, thank you. So just to pick up on what Mr. Carroll said, so I come to this as a consumer of the IB diploma in terms of being an educator, someone who's worked in schools which offer the IB diploma. So I don't come from being an IB official with a script to explain from that side of it. It's very much of this is my experience of it, dealing with both teachers and with students, and also, of course, with parents as well. So, if we make a start then, now is quite an apt time to be thinking about the IB diploma, not only because it may be that you're in a position of just about to start with the IB diploma, or you may be looking ahead to it maybe in a year or 2 years' time even. But because in the coming week there'll be the results released from the May session, May 2026. So the IB diploma, it has 2 examination sessions, one in May, one in November, and overwhelmingly, maybe even exclusively, schools in India, they take exams in May of grade 12. So the exam session lasts for about 3-4 weeks in May. Schools know well ahead of time when
Richard, sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you're sharing slides, but it's not visible right now.
Okay, right, thank you. Let me just quickly do that again. Thank you for pointing that out. Is that better?
I think it's loading. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. And as those results come out, so will you. Many schools will be quite rightly celebrating the achievement of some of their learners, some of their candidates who have achieved outstanding marks. So the IB, as we go through, is marked out of 45, and quite understandably, students who are scoring in the 40 plus range are celebrated for their academic achievement. This seminar, this workshop this morning is not about how to score over 40 in an IB diploma. That is something which I don't think can be delivered through a presentation, an online presentation. It's very much about a relationship that is developed during the course of the diploma program, by what goes on in the classroom, by the school environment, and by the efforts of the learner themselves, the student themselves, alongside the teachers who are working with them. What the aim of today's talk is just to make sure that we are familiar with the diploma program and to talk a little bit about how all students should prepare for it, in that the groundwork for achieving very high marks is the same as for any other student. And also, just to put it in context, very few students are going to get 40 and above. This is an exam board where there is a range of marks, and success is in that range of marks. And I think it's very important to understand that the success of every individual student is very much personal to that student. For some students, success will be getting the diploma. For others, it may be getting 32, and for some, it may be getting 40 or above. But all successes are there to be celebrated, and I think it's really important to understand that. And I think the whole IB philosophy is built around that it's not about a mark, it's about a young person who is developing as a learner within an academic field, but also as a global citizen in a wider context. And so when you look at the way that the IB presents itself, what do they put at the center of their program? What they don't put at the center of their program is what is your mark out of 45, but rather how do we approach learning? That sense that learning is not something confined to a classroom or indeed confined to the years of formal education, but is very much an ongoing process, and that the grounding in learning that is developed during the school years, be it all in a continuum school or be it in the final 2 years of school in the diploma program, is the foundation for going on to higher studies and then going on beyond that as well. Around that, what you'll see is the core. I'll say a little bit more about the elements of the core later on, but it's important again to recognize that the core is not an add-on, it's central to what is there. So when your child is talking about theory of knowledge or CAS or extended essay, it's not, oh, it's a bit of a nuisance they have to do that. It's rather, that's the point. The point is that the IB diploma is a diploma. It's about a range of subjects, a range of skills, a range of things about this approach to learning. And the core is an essential part. It also contributes up to 3 points towards the final mark as well. But that sense that whilst we often talk about subjects, and we will, it's a broader program than that. And all elements of that program need to be understood. So, as well as the core, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, there are the subjects. So, a diploma, you can do the International Baccalaureate and not get a diploma. So, for some students, that might be an appropriate route to take. But I would imagine for all of you here, you're looking at the full diploma. Full diploma requires 24 points. It requires that the core be completed. And those 24 points come from the core and the 6 subjects that a student is required to take. As I said, it's a possible maximum of 45, and that comes from the fact that there are 6 subjects, each of which can get up to 7 points, so that would be 42, wouldn't it? And then 3 from the core. The requirement is that there are 2 levels, higher and standard, that the student needs to do at least 3 highest level subjects. They can do 4 is the maximum, but normally it's 3 higher level, 3 standard level. There is no bonus point for doing 4 higher level. It's purely that for some students that might be appropriate given their higher education ambitions, but the normal, overwhelmingly, the normal way of approaching it is 3 higher level, 3 standard level. Individual schools will have different approaches in terms of when that decision is taken for whether to do a standard level or high level qualification. For most subjects, the higher level is an extra paper to be taken in the exam in grade 12. So there's a common core, and then there is an extension that comes in some shape or form. It might be a higher, an extra paper. It may be that there are additional questions to be answered on other units as well. So as you start the diploma program, it might not be clear exactly what the higher level, standard level mix is. You should have a fairly good idea, but that decision will be taken at some time during the 2-year course. There are mandatory elements, and those include the language A, which again, I would imagine for all schools, for most schools, is going to be English. That's the language of instruction, essentially, that's taking place. Then there is the language acquisition, group 2. That's what we might call an additional language. So that's the second language that a student will be doing. And then mathematics is a compulsory element of the diploma as well, the group 5. And then there are 3 other subjects that are then selected from groups 3, 4, and 6. And we'll have those in a moment. So that's the basic makeup of the diploma, 6 subjects, plus those subjects taken at either higher level or standard level. A little bit more then. So English, again, there are some variations, but the majority of schools are going to do English language and literature. I think it's very important to point out that it's English language and literature. Therefore, there are texts to be read and to be familiar with, as well as doing language exercises. And so in terms of thinking about the challenge of the diploma program, reading is an important part. It's an important part of all subjects, I would argue. but it is clearly a central part of one of the elements that all students will be doing, which is the language and literature of language A. Secondly, there's language acquisition. Most students in India would have been doing an additional language in up to grade 10. For the IB, there are two approaches to the language acquisition. If a student has been doing a language up to grade 10, then a school would be advised that they should offer a language B. In other words, that's taking someone who's got to grade 10 level and taking them further, developing it further. That language course includes not only language, but also thinking about the culture of that particular language as well. So it's quite a developed way of doing that. There is the option of choosing a new language, and the school that you are looking at or you're belonging to might well be offering a new language which your child hasn't taken. And that is taught from scratch, and that is what's known as an ab initio. So they're basically doing a beginner's course over the 2 years, and would acquire a level which is somewhat similar to a kind of IGCSE, if you're familiar with that, as they get to the end of grade 12 to do that. And again, in choosing to do the diploma, you are choosing to do an international curriculum. Language acquisition is not an annoying add-on. It is an important part of the course. And so you have to take that view that this is a serious part of the course. It's not something to just hopefully get through and that might contribute. All these subjects contribute up to 7 marks. And so if something is seen as not that important and you end up getting a 3 rather than a 5, or a 3 rather than a 6, then that's where marks can be lost and you don't get a higher point score as a result. Group 5 is mathematics, and there are 2 mathematics syllabuses: the analysis and approaches, applications and interpretations. For those doing pure science, often analysis and approaches would be a more appropriate course. It's a more, I think things like mechanics are more likely, are elements of the analysis and approaches. Applications and interpretations is a more general math course. Looking at higher education destinations, think about that. And one of the points that we'll make later on is about university preparation. But some universities would expect, indeed require, students to have taken analysis and approaches as their math syllabus if they aren't going for a particular course in engineering, something like that. So I believe some German universities, for instance, the requirement if you're doing an IB DP is that analysis and approaches is the math syllabus that you have completed in order to be eligible for their engineering course. And so do be forward-looking when you are looking at your diploma program. And then you have your other 3 subjects. And the other 3 groups are the individuals and societies, what we might call humanities or social sciences. Sciences, which is what it says on the tin. It includes also computer science as well as physics, chemistry and biology, and other sciences as well. And then there are the arts, and those are things such as visual arts, drama, dance, music. Now, the requirement is, of course, to do 6 subjects. So you've got your 3 that you have to take: the math, the language A, the language acquisition. The other 3 come from these 3 groups, but you do not have to take a subject from group 6. So remember, group 6 is the arts, it's the visual arts, it's dance, it's music. It is quite common for students not to take a subject from group 6, but rather to choose a second subject from either group 3 or group 4. So for instance, if someone is looking at engineering and they want to do physics, chemistry, and math, then they're doing the math anyway, but they need to do 2 sciences, so they kind of double up on their group 4. Rather than doing a group 6 subject, they will take physics and chemistry. Similarly, somebody who's looking at a kind of a business or economics type thing might do economics and business management from Group 3 on arts. That's not I'm not sitting here and saying you should do that. It's just saying that's the flexibility. The IB recognises that for some students, doing a subject from every one of those 6 is not best suited to the course they're going to be pursuing further on. So that's what you'd be aware of. There is this subject, which again, most schools will be offering, environmental systems and societies. It's what they call an interdisciplinary subject. And it appears in both Group 3 and Group 4. So, for instance, if there is a learner who is looking at the selecting, and they're not really someone who is inclined towards science necessarily. They think, well, chemistry, physics, that isn't really where my interest lies, and I want something that's a bit more aligned to where my interests are. Then ESS, which is kind of like environmental management. There's a bit of biology, a bit of geography involved in it as well, but certainly, as the name suggests, awareness of the environment. They might choose that as their Group 4 subject. So they might do psychology, they might be doing psychology, economics, and they might choose as their Group 4 subject ESS. On the other hand, vice versa, if there's someone who's doing chemistry and physics, they might choose ESS as their Group 3 subject, because they're not somebody who necessarily is inclined towards business, that kind of thing. So ESS is a useful way of meeting the demands of the requirements, let me say, of the diploma program, and having that little bit of that degree of flexibility that's there. So do look out for that. Some of you may already have chosen that. I hope if you have, you kind of understood what it is, rather than just saying, oh, it meets the needs of the kind of the group that I have, because it's a subject which was at one time only available at standard level, but now there's a higher level syllabus that's there as well. It's very much hands-on. But it's not a soft subject. It's an interdisciplinary subject, and that's an important difference to be aware of with that. Now, it is possible to do the 3 pure sciences, biology, chemistry, and physics. That is not something that the diploma is designed for. However, there is an understanding that if you are looking to study medicine in India, that this might be an appropriate combination. You would need to talk to your school, because the school needs to get permission from the IB. And if you get 24 points and above, you will be awarded a non-regular diploma, because you haven't got any subjects from Group 3 in that. And I think it's really quite important to think about that this is not a dodge. Oh, I can do the IB, but I don't have to do a social science. Kind of the reason that people are doing the IB is because it offers breadth. It offers an approach to learning and a breadth and an international element of it. And if it's a kind of, I want to do the IB, but I don't, then that's not really in line with what the IB diploma is about. So before requesting it, think, do I really need to do this? Is it the case that I need 3 sciences, or would, for instance, ESS be an appropriate Group 3 subject? So maybe biology, chemistry, ESS might be what you do, or maybe psychology, biology, chemistry, psychology. Is that a more appropriate combination if I'm thinking of going into some element of medicine? Okay, but as it says here, 3 sciences are possible, but it is something that you should not just assume. You need to make sure that the school has understood why, because they will then need to make a request to the IB for that path to be followed. Okay. Let me just pause there. Do we have any questions at the moment? Just checking.
So for the regular diploma, I know that you have to like ask your school, but generally, how do you get one?
You kind of answered the question. You ask your school. So the school then will make a note of that. They'll inform the IB, and then when it comes to the entrant, making the exam entry, they will go through the paperwork for that to be done. So the important thing is right at the beginning, because clearly you're going to be taking the courses, is to do that and be clear why you're doing that. So the reason it's there is essentially for those who want to do medicine in an Indian context where it's required. So, for instance, if you were doing medicine in the UK, physics isn't something that you would be expected or required to do. That's not required for that, and in many other areas as well. It's something that is distinctive, let's say, about the approach in India. And again, look carefully at what the requirement of the institutions that you're approaching is. But the answer to your question is, how do you do it? You do it by your school communicating this to the IB.
Oh, so they have to like ask the board, and then the board has to like. I see. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's they. I'm sure that you might say it's a formality, but I always kind of think few things are a formality. There is a process, and they will go through a process for it, and that process should be a little bit of reflection. Why is it being done? And then they will go through. But it's something that is, there are a significant number of students who will be doing the IB who will be doing that, going through that particular path. Okay,
Understood. Thank
okay, great. Okay, so that kind of speaks to the slide that's in front of us now, isn't it? So making subject choices, again, the majority of you who are here, the choices might well have been made. Though I think most schools would say that when you begin the IB course, you begin with a sense of finding out. Very few schools would encourage you to change lots of things all the time. But if there is something that doesn't quite fit, then the discussion with the school about whether there might be a better combination of subjects, a more appropriate combination of subjects, is certainly one that you could have. My kind of, as it says here, the three things that I would say are uh, factors that should shape your choice is strengths. What does your academic record show? So that if you are, if you've been strong in certain subjects up to grade 10, then that's a pretty good indicator that you will continue to do well in as you go into grade 11 and 12. That said, there is a significant jump between whatever grade 10 program you've done and what is being expected of a student as they go into grade 11 and 12. And the reverse is also true. If you have been finding certain subjects difficult, then it is unlikely that they are going to become suddenly easier just because you're doing them in grade 11 and 12 for the DP program. DP is a challenging program. It's a demanding program. And so choosing to do something because you think you should do it, despite the fact that you might not enjoy doing it, isn't necessarily, I don't think is a great way of doing things. And that plays to the second one. What are your interests? So what has interested you going on? And there might be subjects that you are interested in that you haven't had the chance to do before. Psychology, for instance, is a subject that is available for the diploma program, and not that many schools offer it in the years up to grade 10. And so psychology might be something you want to do because you're interested in that. Make sure your interest is well founded. Do find out about what the course is, what the demands are. But there are a number of subjects that a school might be offering. ESS would be another one that haven't been studied lower down the school, but you might think, oh yeah, that I think is what I'd like to do. Find out, and again, it may be that the school will say, well, you can try it for a week or two, and if it's not quite right, then there's an alternative that you might have. And then future plans. So the three subjects, the three science subjects, is about very much having a plan of going into medicine. But that isn't everyone's plan. But if you have a plan, then think ahead. As I said, if you're going for some courses, there will be clear requirements. So it may be that the analysis math course is a requirement. Therefore, although you're not necessarily making hard and fast decisions about higher education at this stage, if you have a clear sense of this is what I think I'd like to do, make sure that the course, the subjects you choose, the combination that you choose, fits that. And again, in choosing IB subjects, the advice would be the same as it would be for anyone looking at making choices, which is where very much where do your interests lie? What, even if you're not sure about particular subjects, what kind of things have been of interest, so that if you are someone who enjoys dealing with language and dealing with responding to text, then that will take you in a particular path. It may be that alongside the English course, that it may be that history, for instance, is a subject that you choose in group 3 because of that. If you're interested in the kind of science type thing, but you don't feel necessarily, that medicine isn't your choice, or you don't necessarily want to go off and be an astrophysicist, then biology, psychology might be a combination that you look at as well. So again, sensible conversations with the school, the teachers of the subjects, are great ways of confirming the subject choices that you are interested in taking as you go forward. Diploma Programme is a 2-year course, and so this is thinking about how students are assessed. Now, there is as I said right at the beginning, there is an examination session, a May session, as I said. The results are turned around to be released at the beginning of July. So students starting now will be taking their exams in May of 2028. As part of that examination session, there'll be a speaking and listening assessment for those doing language acquisition. And then all subjects also have an internal assessment task. And that I'll talk a little bit about in a moment. And then for those who in group 6, there is usually going to be some kind of performance assessment. So it might be a portfolio if you're doing visual arts, an artistic performance for some of the other subjects. But that's something to be conscious of, as we'll come back to. And then there is the extended essay and the theory of knowledge. So all these are going to be assessed across the 2 years, but there is definitely a window of assessment that closes when the final exam is done in kind of mid to late May of grade 12, and opens at some earlier time. Now, schools will set deadlines, but one of the things that we'll come on to is the importance of having your own kind of small deadlines to help you manage time. And that's because consistency is the foundation for success. So the internal assessments, you're doing those in all the subjects. The school will have its own deadlines that are set for you. And however they are spaced, they create a pressure. And that pressure increases if you do not give yourself a good run to these internal assessments. So in each subject, they're slightly different. What you want to be doing at midway through grade 11, and certainly by the end of grade 11, is have a clear sense of what it is that you're going to do for internal assessment in each subject, because those internal assessments are they're an element of the diploma that assesses how a candidate thinks like a mathematician, works and thinks like a physicist, thinks and works like a historian, for instance. So with history, they will be doing something which is looking at a particular question and how sources are used. They will be evaluating sources and commenting on those. So therefore, identifying the sources, making sure that there's a range of sources available, that they're all not locked behind somewhere, and therefore not easy to access. That kind of preparation needs to be done in good time. Similarly, if you are going to do something in chemistry that's to do with filtration, for instance, is the equipment available in school? For filtration, undoubtedly will be. How are you going to conduct this? What is going to be the series of experiments that you choose to take place? When do they need to be completed to give yourself time to write up your results? That kind of working out your own timeline is really important, so that you're not in February of grade 12 finding that you've got a build-up of deadlines that you're trying to meet, and that you're saying, oh, I can't do this, or I need to stay up late in order to get this finished. February, March, particularly March onwards, candidates should be focusing on preparing for the exams. If they are instead juggling deadlines, staying up late to try and get something done, failing to proofread material and handing it in at the last moment, those are all things that compromise the final quality. So a 2-year course should be taken as a 2-year course. So good study habits are kind of listed in there. Reading ahead. Again, reading is, I think, a really, well, it states the obvious, doesn't it? Reading is a very important thing, but what experience shows is that reading is something that, particularly reading ahead, is something that many students, they're not really in the practice of doing it. They're coming out of a grade 10 program, which is really focused on reading small bits of material, maybe the night before or maybe the night after you've done something, rather than taking that kind of deeper look. So a school might provide, might provide textbooks. Some of these might be digitized, but do become familiar with the school library. I think there is no substitute for, at times, picking a book or a magazine up and reading an article or reading a chapter. It just is a different set of skills that are taking place there. So reading ahead and reading around the subject, really important, I think, if you're going to be more than someone who's getting by. Completing assignments, again, you might say, well, that's obvious, isn't it? It is, until you find how many students at a particular moment find that completing assignments seems to be something they regard as optional, or maybe to be done after deadlines. Deadlines are there to help you organize, so completing assignments on time, really important. Making notes and reviewing notes, and getting better at that. What is it that making notes is about? Making notes is not copying. If you do that, just scan it with your phone and then you've made notes. I think all of us would understand that that is not making notes, and therefore what is the process of taking information, making notes, and then later on coming back and reviewing those notes. Feedback. Teachers spend a lot of time marking. They spend a lot of time giving feedback. That feedback has little use if it's never read. So having an action plan, I've handed something in, I've either heard or I've got written feedback. What am I going to do about it? And actually writing down what you're going to do about it is a way of consolidating that information. I would say your teacher is your strongest resource. Therefore, how do you make sure that your strongest resource is the most effective? At its most effective, it's by that relationship of working with your teacher, being someone in class who, because you've read ahead, you are able to answer questions. Even better, you can ask questions for clarification. That when the feedback comes, you are not somebody who just notices there's some red or green or whatever color they happen to choose writing at the bottom and will just turn the page, but you've read it, thought about it, and actually responded to it. And then finally, that regular review and revision. I mean, the feedback, acting on feedback is part of that. Reviewing notes is part of that. It's that if you leave your revision to just before the exam, it's not particularly effective, because you are asking your brain to do an awful lot of work in a very short period of time. And that rarely is the optimum. It will do, but it's not optimal. And so having, within your weekly timetable, saying, right, there is some time, but I'm going to do that. And the school should help you with revision techniques. You will devise your own. And I'm sure that we will probably at some time have online seminars about study techniques, revision techniques. But just getting into those habits is an important way of putting down the groundwork for success. Okay, and that final one is that expectations, the expectation of you taking responsibility. When you get to university, so you get to university, I'm talking obviously to any students who are listening. When you get to university, you will be given a great deal of responsibility for your learning. And the IB, as with any good +2 program, is not only helping you to gain academic proficiency and mastery, but also an approach to study that gives you greater agency. In other words, that you are taking control of your learning. Those points on the left-hand side are all things that you can do. They're not done to you. I think I'm sure the expectation that your teacher should work harder than you on your IB, that might be true of some students, but those students are not the ones who are successful. You need to work harder than the teacher. The teacher is a valuable resource, but you take responsibility for ensuring the ultimate success of yourself in the diploma program. I said that internal assessments are there. I also made the point that making sure that you take command of your assessments, set up something that is realistic, that is satisfying to you, that is achievable. Those are things. So internal assessment is not really where you're going to make great breakthroughs and win your Nobel Prize. That's at another time and another place. The internal assessment is showing your proficiency, showing that you can work like, as I said, a physicist or a mathematician or a historian. Doesn't mean you should be simplistic, but it does mean that you should try and be straightforward. Set something that you can manage along all the other things that you have to do. Again, your teacher will give you advice. If you are someone who's doing a group 6 subject, such as visual arts, they will require a considerable commitment of time. And just because people often choose them because they are really interested, really passionate, that time can expand. And it isn't unusual to find students who are doing visual arts suddenly finding that, or explaining why they can't do anything else because they've got this art piece that they're working on and they need to spend all day in the art room and something like that. That time is not during the diploma program. So setting up the timescale, when are you going to get your portfolio put together? When are you going to work on things? So that the time that you need, and it's on both sides, the time that you need for other subjects is there. And if you do need to spend time in the art room, when are you going to do the other things, which might be at home? And spending time in the art room can't become an excuse for not doing other things. And so time management, very important. And finally, CAS, which is part of the core, it's not assessed, but it does need to be done. And my experience is that doing something meaningful is the most rewarding way of doing CAS. So doing something meaningful might be, there probably be projects already taking place in the school, but so it might be contributing to that. It might be doing something such as doing a collection, a donation collection with a particular project in mind, and then going to an institution to share the proceeds of that donation, be they cash or be they in some kind of it might be buying a washing machine for a home or an institution. So going about identifying the need, that might be something. Action, so that might be going out and doing something. If, for instance, if you're involved in the International Award for Young People, there is a good relationship between that and CAS, that both of them give recognition for things that you might do. It might be running a coaching session for younger students in a sport that you're interested in, or even being a reading buddy. That's something like that. But do something meaningful, something that you feel personally rewarded about, you can keep a record of, so you can use that record as evidence of what you've done. But make CAS something that is a real positive. And again, when you're applying to universities, depending on how the application process is, this again could be evidence that you draw upon to demonstrate your qualities as a young person that an institution would want to have as part of their program. And then finally, for the time being, the extended essay. So extended essay is an important part of the diploma program. You have to do it. And it's an opportunity, I would say, as it says here, to pursue a particular passion. So you've chosen 6 subjects, but the extended essay does not have to come from one of those 6 chosen subjects. So for instance, there might be something that the school doesn't offer. It might not offer geography, for instance. But then some element of geography might be the thing that you would like to research and go into and write your essay about. And so that would be something that you would do. It might be linked, as it says here, to a university application that you're doing, that you're going to want to do something that's you can reference as you apply to universities. Do look at the resources within the school. Again, this is a very independent piece of work, but you will need to have a teacher who is mentoring you. They don't necessarily need to be a subject specialist, but it is something where you want to be able to have good, positive, constructive conversations about what you're doing, that they can give you guidance and give you input. It requires research, it requires time. I would say that by the middle of grade 11, it's really helpful to have your extended essay topic identified. There's a lot of students who identify something and then find it's not the right thing. To give yourself time to change your mind, to redefine a question, you need to start early. So by the middle of grade 11, this is something that should definitely be on the radar. And by the end of grade 11, you should have made a start on drafting the extended essay. And be familiar with the criteria. Having marked extended essays over a long period of time, what strikes me, first of all, is that quite a lot of the marks are awarded for process. They're about making sure that you have your referencing correct, that you have structured your extended essay in the way that it's expected to do, that you have considered evidence and evaluated it. And a significant number of students lose marks or don't gain marks because they don't do what one might call the simple things correctly. Like, for instance, they don't organize their bibliography in alphabetical order. They don't follow a standard referencing system. They don't put citations into their extended essay. All these things are things that will cause marks to be withheld, and sometimes for extended essays to be referred for not conforming to academic integrity guidelines. And also an element of the extended essay is reflection. So there are 5-6 marks for reflection out of the 36 marks that are available, and very few students get high marks for reflection because they don't reflect very well. And so making sure you're clear how marks are awarded, where marks are awarded, and then to address those elements is an important part of the extended essay process, and then having it finished in good time so that you read through it several times and somebody else reads through it, just to make sure that, for instance, you haven't repeated the same paragraph twice, or that you haven't missed out a paragraph, or that a sentence doesn't finish midway through because you knew you were going to get back to it but you forgot. So all those things require time. And I think the message that comes through from these last few slides is that over the 2 years, you have plenty of time, but it is a commodity that is ticking away by the minute. And at some point, you move from having plenty of time to having enough time, and you don't want to be the person who finds that you have not enough time. And so a consistent approach is the way of managing that. Right, I think there I'm going to pause. You've listened to me for long enough. There are a few more things to address. Ms. Natasha, is there anything at this point that we need to go over again?
So, Richard, there is a question by Miss Anika on Anika. Do you want to just frame the questions on the in the chat box? So, to study medicine in UK and Ireland, is it essential to take biology HL? So they have opted for physics and chemistry, but not biology.
Okay. Well, I'd say that's an interesting choice. So, for instance, in the UK, I speak specifically with the UK, but Ireland, I would imagine, is pretty similar. Chemistry is the most important subject to be taking. And then they would expect biology. For some universities, biology will be a requirement. I mean, all universities will have a information about their entrance requirements. As I said, physics is not a requirement in, well, I'm not going to say any because that's very absolute, isn't it? But physics is not generally seen as being something that's essential for doing medicine. Biology and chemistry are. And they will, if you're doing for medicine, the expectation would be that you would be doing both at higher level. So, you know, the question would be, why are you not doing it at a high level? Biology and chemistry would be the combination that university would be looking for. Again, don't take my word for it. Go back to the university websites, look at what their entrance requirements are. But I am confident that you will see chemistry there consistently, and biology there pretty much as standard as well.
So, Richard, I can just quickly add to that. So, some UK medical schools, especially the higher ranked ones, I know Imperial, UCL Kings, they do need biology at an HL. But they are definitely, it's not, as Richard said, it's not across all schools. So chemistry is the most important one, and then one of either biophysics. So Oxford, I believe, is okay with if you're not having a biology HL, right? And instead, if you have a chemistry or a physics or a maths even, and that works. Ireland, most universities seem to be flexible from what we know. But again, as Richard said, best thing is to verify on the individual university that you're interested in. Royal College of Surgeons, for example, in Ireland, does accept chemistry with either bio or physics. But you will be leaving out some universities, especially the higher ranked ones, by not having biology at HL.
Yeah, and I think it kind of stands to reason that if you're going to do medicine, there's going to be some anatomy involved with that. So I think getting familiar with it early on might be a useful thing to do.
Does that answer your question, Anika?
Thanks, Natasha and Mr. Hillebrand and Mr. Tooth. Yes, answered my question. And I have another question as well. Can I ask it?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I wanted to know regarding the TOK and the extended essay and the IAs, for the marks assigned to the students, are these marks assigned by the school, or is there an external examiner from the IB who visits the school and then gives a mark?
Okay. The internal assessments are marked by the school, and then they're moderated by the exam boards. So the school will send the marks, and then the exam board will look at those and see whether they're consistent with the performance elsewhere. Extended essay, all of those are externally marked. So extended essays need to be done by the beginning of March. So, and then they get sent away to be marked by examiners such as myself. And so everything is externally marked with there. Theory of knowledge, there is an exhibition that's element, but again, there is an exam element which is sent away to be marked. So the internal assessment, as it says on the tin, is assessed internally, and the other two are primarily externally assessed in that regard. Okay.
Thank you.
I think
Any other questions?
Ms.
There
There's a raised hand, yes.
Hi, good morning. I just had a question, like for the internal assessment, like since they're internally marked, like from the school side, and when they're sent out externally to be checked by the IB, is there like a possibility, like if the IB, like if the IB feels that like, this student, the internal assessment is pretty good, and like the teacher hasn't really marked to the fullest extent of what like the student has done, like if it's the paper's like really good or whatever, and they feel like the teachers marked a bit unfairly, is it possible they can like increase the marks to like higher than whatever the teachers and like mark them? Or like is there not that much of a difference usually?
Okay. I think you're putting forward an unlikely scenario, but let's just take it for the time being. I think why I think it's unlikely is that I think your teachers want you to do as well as possible, and they will have a clear set of criteria against which to mark, and when they look at you and they look at your work, they want to see the best outcomes. What the IB is trying to do is to say every school, every teacher, every school is working to that kind of motivation. They want to do as best possible. So how do we assure across all the schools that are doing this that we're not just fair to one student, we're fair to all students? And so that's why the moderation process comes in. And they will look at, they broadly not look at individual students, they will look at the cohort, and they will look across and say, well, basically, does the school's assessment seem to be consistent with what we would expect from that? So yeah, that's how they do it. And if they feel there's something that's unusual, then they will call it in to have another look at it in that respect. But basically, they will sample, and they will sample from the school and say, think, well, does it seem to be in line? And therefore, if you're in a school with fairly few students, then the chances are your work is going to be part of that sample anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Richard, can I just add to that question? Is there any appeal process? Say if you get your IA marks and you don't agree, can you appeal your IA with IB?
I would need to double check. I would need to double check that. The IB as a whole does have an appeals process. So if, for instance, and that's generally to do with the outside assessment. I mean, I think, as I said at the beginning, it is very unusual for a school to enter a mark for internal assessment that is undermarked. I think the far more usual situation, and I'm not saying it's normal, is that a school might have been a little bit generous in marking. However, the moderation process is designed to do that. So, for instance, if a school has been quite strict in its marking, then those might be moderated up by a few marks. It might make no difference to the point score, because obviously the overall mark is a cumulative mark. So it might be moderated up, and the point score might not change. But the appeals process is there, and once the results are issued, so the results, as I said, will come back out in July. You have a certain amount of time to review them, and then you can appeal. Appeals is a paid-for service, and so you want to have a good sense of why you're appealing. But if a student, if they look at the cumulative mark and they're within 3 or 4 marks of the grade boundary, and they feel, I think I'm worth a bit more than that, then you can go through the appeals process, and the mark may go up, it may stay the same, or it may go down.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Well, that kind of takes us on towards university admission, doesn't it? So just to reiterate, or not reiterate, to confirm that the IB diploma is recognised for university admission in India as elsewhere. So as it says, the AIU has equivalents. If you are going within the Indian university system, when the result before the results are issued, you make it clear to the school, because then the IB will issue an equivalence document that you will present to the Indian universities that you are applying to. One of the questions I think that some parents ask, maybe not in this room, is, well, if you're focusing on Indian universities, is the DP an appropriate program to be following? My answer to that would be yes, because it's a really good approach for university. I think when talking to students who come back from university, both in India and particularly if they're outside of India, one of the comments they make is how they've been prepared for the requirements of independent study when you go to university. And that's something that is a feature of overseas universities, and is a feature of many Indian universities as well, and any Indian university as you go up, that you are required to be an independent learner. And so, having managed internal deadlines, internal assessments, extended essay, etc., you are doing the kind of things that university students are required to do. Just coming back to on the left there, the main DP examination session is in May. That is also sometimes a time when entrance exams are being done in India. My advice would be to people who are maybe looking at doing entrance exams is that it might be a better strategy to finish the DP and get your marks from there, and actually then do the entrance exam in the following year. Because often there is particular exam technique which is very different to the DP, and so that might be that might be approach if that's the case. And often, quite understandably, students want to keep their options open. They might be looking at India, they might be looking at Singapore, they might be looking at the US, and so that time after the exams are done, that's a time in which you can follow up on some of these things. And as I said, if you're looking at Indian universities, often you don't need to. You can go straight on because you've got your with the qualifications and you've got your equivalence certificate. But if there's an entrance exam that requires particular preparation, then trying to do that alongside the DP is an extra demand, and it's not necessarily something that is the right thing to do for every student. Anyway, that's just a personal opinion. Coming back to, you were talking about the looking ahead, that kind of examination administration. Part of the examination administration is that the IB will want predicted grades from the school. These are not these do not determine the final grade. They're a kind of a quality checking process, so that the IB and the school can have a clear sense of are the expectations of the school in line with the expectations of the IB, and it's essentially a conversation that's taking place between the IB and the school. As I said, it does not decide, it does not influence the final grade. The final grade is decided by the performance of the student. A school might choose to keep that conversation separate from a conversation about university grades, And I think if you're, when you're looking at university, your performance is a pretty good guide to where the kind of final grade that you might get. So, for instance, if you've been getting 6s throughout grade 11 and sometimes the occasional 7, then you could expect to get a 6 or 7 in that subject. And the likelihood is that the school, if it's looking at having to make projected grades for a university, will say whether we think the student will get a 7. Now, to the IB, they might think the more likely outcome is a 6, but an optimistic and an aspirational grade is something that a school will often give you. And on the other hand, if you've been getting 4s all the way through grade 11, it would be unusual for a school to say, oh, well, we think you're going to get a 7. If you're getting 4s all the way through grade 11 and maybe getting up to 5s in grade 12, then that is an indication of where you are likely to end up, which comes back to the point that consistency is important. If you wish to get if you think that you should be getting a 7 by the end of grade 12, then make sure that you're doing the right things in grade 11 to give the school confidence that you are on track for that as you go through and into grade 12 as well. Okay. So we're talking very much about the students and the student side of things. So just thinking a little bit about parent contribution as we draw to a close. Parents, just be aware of the academic year is slightly different to the typical Indian year in terms of when the exams fall, because they come in May. Therefore, kind of make sure that you're not having a big holiday in April, because May is the examination session. And grade 11 will probably follow a similar pattern to that. And grade 11 exams are important because they inform the performance. And they also, if you're going for a North American university, they will go on a transcript that's been presented. Make sure that your child has appropriate study space. I'm sure they already do. And that it's used effectively. So therefore, that any gadgets that might be distracting are not there most of the time. And the management of time. And yeah, as I said, this is very much about independent learning. And so just having conversations about what's going on at school and where they're going, where they are in their course and how it's going, and if they're doing their extended essay, how are they setting about it, just talking about it, maybe reading a couple of paragraphs of it just to get an idea of what they're doing. It might not make a great sense of them to you because of what they've chosen to do, but does it grammatically make sense? Is their writing clear to someone who's a non-specialist? That's the kind of feedback that can be helpful. And just make sure you keep in contact with the school. The parents' conferences come around pretty regularly. Make sure you go to those, have a conversation about how your child is getting on and what they can do to strengthen their performance, to continue in the progress they continue to make, as well as going to the school events that are an important part of a rounded school life. And I think that's kind of a final point, which is that a rounded school life is what they should have in grade 12. Coming back to that original diagram, the subjects are part of what broader program. And so they are creating a young, or helping to shape a young learner who is ready for a life beyond school. And a life beyond school includes lots of things. So do help your child to participate, to manage time, to do the things that alongside their academic interests they enjoy doing. So if they're interested in martial arts, they continue to do that. But their time is managed for that. Key thing, pace it so that stress is avoided. And that penultimate point, sleep. Young people, as we all do, require sleep. I mean, what is the recommended? 8 hours sleep. When your child has to go to school, if they're having to get up at 6 o'clock to get the bus and whatever it might be, well, where are they going to get that 8 hours sleep? Not if they go to bed at midnight, I would calculate. So just helping them to manage their time, keep themselves healthy, so that they are in school regularly. Very strong correlation between attendance and performance are things there. So it's about consistency, it's about pace, it's about being that positive cheerleader to help them as they go through 2 years, which are rigorous, but don't have to be arduous, I think I would say. Rigorous in that they are demanding, but yes, they're hard work, but they don't have to be overwhelming, and your support will help them to manage that time. Okay, thank you for your patience. Are there any other questions at this point?
Thank you so much, Richard. I found myself nodding along to a lot of things that you were saying throughout the presentation. And like you said, now is the time for our parents and students to ask any questions, whatever that may be. Please go ahead.
I was hoping you weren't going to say you were nodding off, but let's see if anyone else is still with us. What is the most common mistakes students make? Being confident that everything can be done in 6 weeks at the end of grade 12, I think is the most common mistake. It will happen. Something will happen at the end of grade 12, but for the best results at the end of grade 12, something needs to be happening all the way through. So that pace, that management, that setting small deadlines, which isn't to say you lead a life of being completely in a study mode all the time, but in order to enjoy a broad curriculum, a broad education, it's making sure that the time that is required for study is given, and that each week you can look at it and say, yeah, I've made progress. Deadlines, I can see why I'm either meeting them or on course to meet them. So as I said, the most common mistake is the sense that I don't need to get serious until sometime in grade 12.
Please feel free to type in your questions or just speak them. This is the time when it's perfectly okay to unmute yourself and ask questions. Richard, there's a question. If the child has bio, psychology, and economics, what all career options are open to them? And as the child will be entering IGCSE this year, or ending IGCSE this year, I imagine.
Okay. Right. Well, I think when you're making choices for the +2, there are two, and there are probably more than two. There are two kind of approaches. One of which is, what do I have to do? Because I know definitely what my destination is at the end. And the second one is, how do I keep my options open? Because I'm not sure what my destination is at the end. And I would say the majority of young people are falling into the second category, i.e., they're not quite sure what they're going to do at the end, but therefore the important thing is not to close too many doors. Now, if they're doing biology, psychology, economics, then an obvious area would be psychology. They might go on to do something to do with kind of BSc in psychology. But one element of psychology is kind of behavioral psychology. And that with economics might be something that leads them towards more business and thinking about, or even supporting economics, because clearly things like game theory and that kind of thing are within economics, and psychology is part of that. So they might go towards economics, they might go towards business, they might go towards human resources. That might be something they do. Or it may be that the biology is the thing that they are interested in, and so that's their point of departure. I think from what I've said, the answer to your question is there isn't a one answer, and that's a really good position to be in if you're not quite sure what the answer is going to be. Keeping those options open, and a combination like that, supported as they are by doing a math course, as well as the English means that they got breadth, and therefore there are lots of opportunities. And one of the things that will be taking place in that the next 3 years, if they're finishing IGCSE in the coming year, is helping them to be clear on the higher education course. That again might not decide the career, but it gives them a clearer sense of direction. So that combination is a good one for keeping doors open and giving time to get a best sense of where the kind of more definite interests lie.
Thank you. Actually, as my daughter will be giving IGCSE, so I want to be sure what subject she should choose for for IB. So the two things she has in mind is health economics and international relationship policies. So, but she has a knack for bio and she wants to keep bio. That's why I thought that these subjects can be an options, and thanks for the help.
Okay, good.
Any other questions from parents or students? If there are no further questions, we'll end it. Anyway, the webinar has extended quite a bit beyond an hour. So any parents or students, feel free to interrupt me as I thank Mr. Richard Hillebrand for joining us today. It's really wonderful to have him as part of academia community and helping our students do better. I think it was wonderful listening to him today, and even for us educators who have been doing international curriculum for quite some time, it was very educational and very useful. So thank you very much, Mr. Richard Hillebrand. Thank you very much, all the parents and students who are part of our academia community to join us today. And I think, so have a lovely rest of the Sunday, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Just adding to that, in case there are any further questions or you have contact details, don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Right.